What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Elevate Your Grind, brought to you by the Cannabis Lab. I am your host, Todd Rosales, and it is excellent to be here today. We had taken a little hiatus from recording episodes. We had gone pretty hard, recorded 8 or 9, fell behind. We're finally getting those out. So some of the episodes you're going to see might be a little behind schedule, might feature some old topics, but there's some amazing guests nonetheless. So please enjoy those. You can always check those out at youtube.com/elevate your grind. For all things Cannabis Lab, check us out at joinclab.com. Definitely want to be a part of some of the upcoming events. We've got some really cool stuff going. We have a panel coming up on the 21st on what rescheduling means. I'm sure we'll talk about that on the podcast today. But the pros, the cons, we have a few pretty significant lawyers in the space that are going to walk us through that. Lots of other great stuff coming up down the road. So check those out at joinclab.com. On the 21st, we will be in Miami, Tampa, and Orlando and Fort Lauderdale. The Miami one will not be at American Social. That's going to be at 800 Lucky. So if you go to the Miami chapter, it's going to be at a different location. So just go to joinclab.com for all that information. Okay. My guest today, there's a deep history with my guest today. This show, this show got its kind of launched off at the Benzinga conference in Miami in 2020, which was probably one of the last major shows before the pandemic happened. I recorded maybe 6 in-person episodes at the Benzinga conference and kind of fell in love with doing this, and then just rode off in the sunset ever since then. They've been kind enough to invite me back every year to set up the podcast. We've had some great setups there. We've got some amazing guests. Some of our top episodes have been filmed from Benzinga. I'm honored that I get to call these folks friends, specifically the people or the person who's on the show today. And I'm honored that they still continue to have me back from a podcasting standpoint. So without any further ado, please welcome Patrick Lane from Benzinga. Thanks for joining me.
Very nice to be here, man. I'm blushing. It was very, very nice of you to say all those nice things. I'll try to live up to them during this session, pal.
I think a lot of us who started out in this industry 4 or 5 years ago became kind of professional conference goers because you never knew what was the right one to go to or not. And I would say that the Benzinga show quickly came to the forefront of one of the better shows to attend. And at this point, outside of MJ BizCon, I would say is the best attended from the quality of attendees that come. And the only reason I say outside of MJ BizCon is because BizCon is so big, it has everybody.
It's massive. It's a different thing entirely, right?
I think you guys have done some of the greatest work in putting together a conference, even the evolution of the conference itself. In 2020, it was very capital focused, right? And then even with capital drying up in the industry a lot, unfortunately, it became one of the best executive networking conferences that's out there.
I appreciate you saying that, man. And I'll give your viewers, anybody who doesn't know us, just a quick background, right? But the conference is obviously very important to us. We've been covering the cannabis space for almost a decade, maybe even a little more now. And I think we were maybe one of the first, if not the first, financial media company to cover cannabis. And a lot of the analysts and the major institutions wouldn't come near it. So I'm excited. I think that overall, there's a lot to be desired. We all know from the availability of capital in this space, and the regulatory hurdles that there's been some great news on over the last week or week plus. And I know we're going to get into that, but we've been sort of a stalwart participant over the last now 6 years since we launched our first conference in this space. I remember it well. And God, I remember that conference in 2020, literally the next week when things shut down.
Yeah.
Right. Some people say we caused it, but don't believe what you hear.
No, you did not cause it, I don't think. But I remember setting up in the expo hall. I don't even think you guys knew that we were going to do a podcast there. The company I was working for at the time, Real Cloud Pros, we had a booth. We set up the podcast in the booth. You guys loved it. Started bringing folks over to us. And then actually, I remember the recap article that was sent to PR used a picture of me interviewing at the time. He's not in the industry anymore. The dude from King's Garden.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Talk about the amount of time we've spent in this space to be talking about King's Garden. God bless him.
Yeah.
Um, wow,
So
yeah, that's a name I haven't heard in a hot second.
this dude,
Um,
look, I can say it, you can. It's your show, but this dude shows up, and at the time, your conference was very much a suit conference, and I don't mean that by
definitely.
the type of people
No, it
who's
was
going. I
buttoned
mean
up. It was capital, family
people.
offices,
I wore
and
a
the sort.
jacket. People wore suits, depending on what part of the industry you were. You're trying to kind of assimilate into the crowd, and this dude shows up in a t-shirt and brings like three girls and just skimpy ass outfits and just stuck out like a sore thumb.
Yeah. Needless to say, we've come a long way, right? It's this industry, we've always been sort of in our role here, we've been sort of the capital hawks, trying to identify capital in the space, bring it to the conference, give people the opportunity to get investment as a result of meeting people at our conference. Even the latest one we did in Miami, there was still someone who raised, I think it was 10 or 12 million from that conference, right? So it is really cool to hear that some of this stuff still happens, albeit in a very difficult environment, right? But our place in this industry has evolved. You're absolutely right. And I think we are very networking heavy. And in true form, I think everybody's been predicting consolidation over the last several years. It's literally something that's been on everybody's tongue: M&A, consolidation. And we find ourselves now, especially at our conferences, connecting people that want to buy and sell assets too, right? That's actually one of the features of Chicago, the conference coming up September 27th and 28th, that is new, right? We haven't done it before. We have not done it in even our most recent Miami conference, is to set aside a room where we have people who are buying assets, people who are selling assets, meeting one another without any of our middlemen, right? We want that room to be solely for those folks, and obviously give them the opportunity to do business,
Yeah.
right? And obviously everybody has their brokers, their
It,
lawyers, and a lot of the people who listen to this podcast, I would imagine, right? But it is very important that we provide that service.
and you guys have done it. Like and no matter what role I hold in this industry, and the unfortunate thing for some of us is that that happens because of just the way this industry goes. There's always been opportunity for me there, even as the director of business development for Heisman VP, whatever the hell I was.
Mm.
We would go to Benzinga, and that's where I was looking for new partners in new markets. It was very easy to come across new operating partners there, and even large dispensary chains within certain markets. And it was, and that's not something, when you hear the name Benzinga Capital Conference, that you would think you would go there for. You would think that it is mostly the CFOs and learning about the investment side of it and the financial vehicles that you can leverage for your company. But it is just such a good cross section of cannabis education. And the financial markets are always going to be a part of this industry in the near future, because we're a startup industry. Everyone's raising capital. We're all fighting for the same
Mm-hmm.
thing, but it also gives you a good measure of where you stand in the industry, and how your business is progressed. So, I can probably sit here and just tell you guys how great the conference is till the end of the episode here. But I hope folks come and check it out for themselves. I'm very excited to come up to Chicago for it. Hopefully we'll be recording a couple episodes of the podcast, taking over one of those little podcast booths that you guys have in there. And
Bring it, man.
I think the hardest part about your conference is, I'm very much like a bad high school student at a conference. I don't go to class. I just go, I walk the halls and see who I can run into, right? So I'm always,
Sure,
walking
sure.
around the conference. You guys do such great programming that I have a hard time not wanting to sit in on the sessions. Like, I've missed
Well, and
meetings and have been late for meetings because I've gotten stuck in sessions that were so intriguing.
you're absolutely right. And that is the real tough part about our event, because, and I got to give credit where credit's due. I mean, Elliot and Javier and the Cannabis News Desk, right? They've done a phenomenal job of putting together the agenda of this conference. I mean, we have everybody from, Kim Rivers to Boris Jordan to Charlie Bachtell to Governor J.B. Pritzker from Illinois, to Jason Wild, A lot of your tier two operators and
That
your up and coming brands are present and will be featured there. But
that
I
whole
think
Mike Tyson incident on the plane happened on the flight to the Miami Benzinga
it
conference.
did. It did. And listen, we will take whatever news we can get, right? But you know, we've had Mike, we've had Ric Flair. There will probably be a surprise presence at this one, right? There's always something fun and interesting that happens at a Benzinga conference.
Does the prizes name rhyme with Bulk Bogan?
I don't know what you're talking about. How about that? Um, but but I do think it's interesting. You know, last year I think it was Al Harrington and Ricky Williams and Calvin Johnson, Rob Sims, like all these Ben Wallace, these former athletes talking about, you know, who was smoking on their teams and who was using cannabis to self medicate in the NFL and the NBA, and how they would always deny it, but everybody was full of shit back then. It was just really, really fun. Um, and I think that was right before Mike Tyson, you know, lit up on stage, right? So it's just one of those things. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I remember I got the opportunity. I think I was sitting down with Jesse Channon at the time when you guys were on
Yeah,
stage smoking with
Columbia
Tyson
Care.
and Flair and everything else. So I
Yep.
had like the Inception interview where I had like one of their head branding guys for one of their partners with me while you guys had the better interview behind. Jesse, not that I don't love you, but you know, Mike Tyson's an idol of mine.
Sorry, Jesse.
Yeah. But you know, the quality is always there. I'm excited to see what you guys have going forward. You know, I know most of the celebrity brands come through and stop, but even just the deep cannabis knowledge that you're having on your stage, the founders, the successful,
Yeah.
and you know, it's funny, like 2020, I joked and I said it was very much a suit conference, but you look going forward and you're starting to see a lot of the major brands in the market coming to your
Hmm.
shows. You know, like I look and I watch the I forget the name of the podcast you guys do live every day, but all of a sudden, like I check to see who your
Cannabis
guests
Daily.
are. Like, oh, I've had that person. I've had that person. Yep, that's a Matteo client. Of course, they have them. I have them too. And then all of a sudden, I started branching off, and I went into David Polly from Preferred Gardens and Ted Lighty from Alien Labs. And then all of a sudden, I'm watching your show, and I see like Ted Lighty pop up. I'm like, wait a second, they're diving into the culture the way I am too, and it's so cool to see that you guys bring these folks into the fold and give them, you know, put them on your platform because I think that's so important.
Well, and just to that point, right? You said we used to be a suit conference, right? I think financial services has and will continue to evolve, right? And a lot of these people who are your traditional investors and financiers, right? They're finding their place in an industry that is still very nascent and very run by founders, right? Initial founders. So I think it's interesting to see that dichotomy play out in real life. And man, listen, given the news that's happened over the last few days, the last week, the conversation at this conference is going to be on fire, right? The networking will be off the charts, and I think that there really is. I mean, I'm blowing up. There's a renewed interest in getting to the table, in coming to the conference, and getting some deals done, right?
So
And I do think it's because of that news, honestly.
let's talk about that news. So it was the HHS recommended to the DEA that the cannabis should be rescheduled from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. And I think that that does a lot of good. I also think it does some potential bad in the industry. So I'm actually super excited to hear about all the professional opinions at your conference. Like, you know, in my opinion, and I'll throw it out there first, like as far as from a banking standpoint, from a taxing standpoint, and from a financial market standpoint, I think it does everything this industry needs right now. This industry is hurting. It needs money. We've tapped into most of the private investors that we can in this
Hmm.
space. Like there are, like, let's be honest, there are only so many family offices in the country and in the world, right? And not
Right.
all of them are going to invest in cannabis. Not all of them are going to invest, you know, around cannabis. And they've been tapped a lot over the last 10 years because institutions can't come in this way. And on top of that, family money, there's no directive that it has to be deployed. It can sit in the bank, for
Right.
lack of a better term, right? Like that's the
Right.
one thing people don't realize when they're raising money with family offices is one of the options is to do nothing. Like, is it safer to do nothing with my money than invest it in you? So, we've done a lot of that. So this rescheduling, I think, would be significant impact into funds coming into the industry. But my worry is that it destroys the people who have the scars on their backs, that we're going to get to a point where the MSOs who, let's be honest, have a significant amount of debt on their books, they've been facing investor backlash for a long time. Like, they'll have the opportunity to exit some of, if not all of their business to a larger pharmaceutical company or a larger,
Sure.
somewhere along those lines. And I think, we're in the same industry. I'm not anti-MSO by any stretch of the imagination. I'm pro-industry, and I think the MSOs succeeding allow the guys like Ted and David to build their business brick by brick because the industry succeeds. My fear is all those people who are all anti-MSO and think the MSOs are evil. Well, welcome to big pharma and see what happens then. And you're trying to fight that war. So
well,
I'm
listen,
curious to see both sides of that argument.
I think you're absolutely right on with the idea that there's going to be good and bad to any one of these things that happens. And we didn't talk about it, but the news, I think it was yesterday or the day before, the Politico announcement that it is safe banking, the SAFE Act is deemed imminent at this point. That Sherrod Brown thinks there is a deal in place to finally get SAFE done, right? But I think whether that's true or not, and believe me, we've all been burnt a number of times hoping that this would be true in recent memory, and whether scheduling or rescheduling rather is something that's going to bring in the top upper echelon of companies in the world to the cannabis space. I think we're at a really interesting nexus right now for this industry. The conversation, it never mattered more to be in the room, right? Is this going to be helpful for the industry? Is it not? We don't know. We're going to find out, right? My personal opinion is that there's things that you can fight. There's things that that you can say, hey, no, we want to do this the right way. So there's people that have argued against federal legalization for years, saying the current setup of businesses and the way they operate would be negatively affected by that, right? I don't know that anybody's going to be able to hold off a giant CPG company.
No.
It may be that the craft market grows exponentially at that point. I'm not sure. But I will say that, again, the conversation is what matters. And that's going to be happening in the room. It's going to be happening, on Benzinga.com and these other sites. You're going to be having that conversation right here.
Yeah.
And it's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out.
That's what I'm so excited for the conference, for that conversations. And in the position that you guys put me in to be able to have, I think I had 21 interviews at the last Benzinga over the course of 2 days.
Busy boy.
Yeah. Now they're short. They're only 15, 10 to 20 minutes. They're not my typical long form 45-hour, whatever it is. But, I'm super excited to be able to have that kind of access to the executives. Obviously I have the advantage of having a podcast, but sitting down and being able to have that conversation over and over again with different people and so many different viewpoints on it. Like, my opinion, as long as you have the guys like Ted and David and Caleb and Doja and Mario that I view them as the artists of our industry, right? Like, when you talk to singers, you talk to comedians, you talk to actors, there are a lot of these people who weren't very talented at first, but they loved it. They absolutely loved it. And you talk to, I'm a big fan of comedy, and you talk to all these comedians like Gabriel Iglesias, who's doing multiple arena tours. And he's like, I never dreamed of this. He goes, I just wanted to pay my rent. I wanted to pay my bills while doing comedy. And when you talk to guys like Ted and David, and that's what they say, the fact that I can make a living just doing what I love is incredible to get to the point where they have this business they can build. So as long as we can still have those guys and gals, the artists of the industry, that if it went illegal tomorrow, they'd still be doing it. If all they can do was make 50 grand a year, they'd still be doing it. Those are the ones that I think are going to be the ones who shape what this industry should look like. And as long as there's a lane for them to survive and thrive, candidly, I'm not sure I give a shit what happens to the industry.
Well, really, you got to think at that point, we're getting ahead of ourselves, right? Like, we're going to be building this industry for years to come, right? And look at what has happened in big pharma, and CPG companies, right? There are a whole, well, geez, not a whole bunch, a very small few at the very top, but there's still quite a few companies, clawing for market share, right? So it's not as if we're killing opportunity. It's not as if, the MSOs are going to dictate the future of this industry, but it will be interesting to see what happens. I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, man.
And safe banking, Todd. I mean, safe would be safe's what people really need,
Yeah.
right? Like, yes, rescheduling I think is something that would be helpful, but also be concerning in some ways. Safe gives the opportunity for, somebody working down the street at the dispensary to go get a mortgage
Yeah.
without getting turned away, to have a credit card, to have a bank account, right? These companies would be given the ability to bank normally, right? And not have to be so cash heavy,
Yeah.
right? Which is just not an effective way to manage your books when you get to a certain size. I mean, I was on the phone with a guy who owns a local dispensary chain here in Michigan, right? Very under the radar, growing like a weed. Sorry, I hate the pun, but he is. And in the next year, he'll be almost $250 million, right? His EBITDA is strong. He's got no debt on the balance sheet. And I get that Michigan's a tough market, but this guy's thriving right now. And it's people like him that you're like, man, you reach a certain size. How are you a cash business at that point? That's
Yeah.
crazy to think that much money would be in cash in all these different places, right?
Speaking of which, if you have an issue with anything he just mentioned, please hit me up at trosales@greencheckverified.com. Quick
And
commercial
there you
for
go.
myself, because this is what we do. But I agree with you. I would love to see the immediate path forward be safe banking and not rescheduling, because I am of the ilk right now that I'm not sure I want the federal government to have that much control over the cannabis industry, in the sense that they have not been participating in it yet, and the state and local officials have. I would like the people who have had some sort of experience in it to continue to work with it for the immediate future, until we find a model that works, right? I think we have some decent models in each state. Do we have one that should be replicated over and over again? No, but I think each individual state is working on that. And until we find something that kind of works and, doesn't destroy these companies from a taxing standpoint and allows them to grow and thrive, at that point, I would love to see almost like an RFP process for the government to say,
Yeah.
hey, all the states, we'd love to see your model. We're going to help evaluate what works, maybe bring in some of the heads of the major cannabis companies as consultants. I don't know, but I would love to see the states stay in control for the near future before turning it over to the federal government, mainly because of my experience at the Social Security office, the DMV, and anywhere else I go and deal with the federal government. So
That's
I,
fun, isn't it?
yeah, that's what I'd like to see going forward. So that's what I'm most excited. I'm excited to hear the opinions of the Jason Wilds of the world on that topic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, he's got them for sure. And then you've got people like Governor Pritzker in Illinois, right?
Yeah.
Giving tax breaks to cannabis companies, trying to alleviate some of the burden of 280E at the federal level. And to be honest, the conversation is so vast that will be had around this news with SAFE, the news with the HHS recommendation, and just the overall energy in the market. These cannabis stocks are finally feeling a little uptick after a long downhill slide, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how they come out swinging a little bit, see if people have a little more swagger in their step for once. I mean, it's been a couple years since I've seen that.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. And I don't know if I've dropped this yet. So let me just say this. If anybody's interested in the conference, you can grab tickets at bzcannabis.com. That's bzcannabis.com. Or you can reach out to events, that's events plural, at benzinga.com. And we can figure out if there are opportunities to get you involved as a last minute exhibit, sponsor, speaker. There are opportunities available.
If you are in the cannabis space, I promise you, you will not be disappointed in this ticket and in this event. I promise it. You will make great connections. You will find friends. You will find business. As long as you put into the show, you can't just like show up and expect to be swarmed by people. But if you put the time in, you sit in the sessions and you go to the lunch and sit with people and talk, you will get a positive ROI out of this show, no matter what. And I will continue to support it. I will be there every time it goes to Miami because it's in my backyard. I will be there every time I can in Chicago now. I'm super excited for Chicago because what would be better than cannabis and some deep dish pizza, maybe some Chicago dogs and
Oh,
Italian
come
beef?
on. Now we're talking, man. And I think rumor has it that there is a company that will be sponsoring and hosting a hot dog cart live on the floor.
Hell yeah.
Real live Chicago dogs on site at the conference.
See, now you guys are
So,
thinking that's another reason why it's the best conference. We're in Chicago. We're
come on,
bringing
man.
Chicago dog carts into the conference.
We're not messing around, right? We know you're hungry. We get it.
We are
Um,
hungry. It's a weed
yeah,
conference.
I mean, right. I think the other thing too, we haven't talked about this, but tonight, and you're based in Florida, right? That's where
Yep.
you are.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So tonight marks the beginning of the NFL season,
It
right? I'm not
does.
sure when this episode will air, but my Detroit Lions are taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm just saying it right now. I like the spread. It's 4.5. Over under is like 53. So I'm taking the Lions. Let's go. Let's go,
I'll
Lions.
support you. I
Thank you.
I am a Bills fan, so we kick off Monday Night Football against the Jets. I don't think I have to worry about anybody taking the side of the Jets, at least the ones that watch me.
I
And
don't
I
think
don't
you do, man.
know if you know this, but the Bills are almost like the unofficial team of cannabis. You look at the amount of Bills fans that you see there. You've got like the Paxias, you've got
Yes.
um
Phil
Carson
Carlson from
from Banks.
KCSA.
Who was that?
Carson. Phil Carlson from
Yep.
KCSA, the head of their cannabis practice.
You, like
Big
if you
Bills
look
fan.
during the playoff season, like Twitter, cannabis Twitter, whatever you cannabis X, whatever you want to call it, is just lighting up with Buffalo Bills fans, and I love it.
I know, man.
I had Carson Amiston on the show like 2 weeks ago, and I made her like I
Oh,
go, well,
she's
we going
great,
to.
isn't she?
She's the best. Uh, I've said two times, and I don't mean any offense by this, that there have been two people on the show that I felt I was not smart enough to be interviewing. One of them was Carson, the other one was Ryan G. Smith from LeafLink. So
Oh yeah,
uh,
yeah. No, Ryan's brilliant. Carson's brilliant. So no offense taken.
yeah. So, but I that's what I love about this show too. Like I get to go see my friends, man. And there's not
Yeah.
many things that I can talk about. Like I truly show up to the Benzinga conference first day. It's like being the groom at a wedding. Like you're in a conversation with someone. Hey man, good to hold on. I'm gonna go talk to these people. I'll be right back. I gotta, and you're just all over the place and you really have to plan your day. But um I want to kind of wind back, right? Like you guys are become this mainstay in the industry, but how did it get there? Like so it started out Benzinga is a financial news site. You guys
Yeah.
have been focusing on financial markets for a while, make the decision to pivot and cover cannabis. How controversial was that decision? And then you have this amazing small team of folks that just crush it. Patrick, uh, Javier, like there's only a
Yeah.
handful
Elliot,
of
the
you guys
whole
that are focused
team,
on this.
Jason, Lou. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, we found out early on that, being a financial media company, right? The people that are reading our content, and the number has grown vastly over the years that I've been here. I've been here for now almost 7 years. Um, but we have around 15 million individual investors that read our content every month, right? And just on cannabis alone, it's about 1.5 million, right? So we knew that nascent markets were important. Everybody, I mean, you, me, anybody who invests, you're always looking for a little edge. You're looking for first movers. You're looking to get in early in certain industries, right? Look at AI, look at sports betting,
Yeah.
look at, everybody who wishes they had invested $100 in Amazon back in the day, or Google, or Apple, or Disney, right?
You're starting to
Now,
age yourself with Amazon. Apple would be the one from my generation.
oh kill me now. I missed out on all that. But listen, I think the thing for us is we knew nascent industries were important. We saw the opportunity with cannabis companies going public, and that's really when we got into the game. I mean, I remember Kushco way back in the day, right, going public, and it being like, whoa, this is a thing.
Wow.
These companies are going to be allowed to IPO, and not just on the pink sheets, but on major stock exchanges, right? So it's been really interesting to see how we've grown over the years. But it really was an effort of Javier and what he did with our cannabis news desk, and Elliot and I building the conference out with our events team here. And like just like you said, a lot of these people are our friends now. We've seen them go through uphill trajectories and real peaks and valleys over the last several years. And this industry, like others that we're getting into now, is one that we'll always be a part of, right?
Yeah.
Benzinga is nascent industry, in the same way that we cover every major stock in the US and really North America.
Yeah. Dude, I remember, and I don't know if it's just maybe my head, but like you see people, a guy like Javier, right? When I first started in the industry, how he was getting a ton of love, he was very popular. And like a lot of times you feel like you meet some of these people and there might be like a diva quality to him or like an arrogance to him. The first time I met this dude, he was the kindest fucking person I ever met in my life.
So
Couldn't have been
nice.
nicer, had
Even the
recognized
word
my name from
diva
like,
that you say is hysterical when you think about Javier. He's just
yeah.
not at all, you know?
No, he's so kind, so nice. You and your brother as well. Like it is,
Ah, we're okay.
you guys are okay. But every conference, you guys come up, say hi, thank us for coming and everything else. And at the end of the day, like, you thank me for coming. I feel so grateful that I get to set up my show at your event and just kind of like
Glad
piggyback
to have
off
you,
of
man.
it, which is, you know,
Well,
it's
okay, so let's take that for a second too. We never wanted this capital conference to feel so exclusive that people couldn't participate. The goal for us was always to say, you know what? We want capital to flow. We want to help capital flow. We want to shine the light on where it is flowing and try to figure out how to unplug the drain, so to speak, right? And I think we found that niche, right? I think, even social equity licensees in some of these new markets are coming to this conference and getting licensing deals, getting funded, right? And it's really wonderful to hear, right? It's not just the MSOs, it's not just the startups. Everyone has a place at this conference,
mhm.
you know?
It is
And just like you, man, and all the things that you've built over your career, the one thing that I'm proudest of, from my time at Benzinga, right? And I helped start the events business here. I run the sales team now. I think it's really interesting to see how cannabis has grown, right? And how Benzinga's name has become synonymous with the cannabis industry, right? I think it's a really, really cool thing. And I'm really proud to have been a part of that.
I'm I'm proud to have watched you guys grow, and I'm very appreciative that you keep a little spot for me there, and that I get to continue to see you
Always,
guys
buddy.
and watch you guys grow. Um, Chicago's coming up. Was it 27th, 28th?
Yeah, September 27th and 28th. We are 20 days away. Um, and the night before there'll be a welcome reception. We're doing our after party on the 28th at Tunnel. At bzcannabis.com is where you can find all the information and tickets and different extracurricular events that are happening. But we like to have fun, right? We're not stodgy. This is not a stuffed shirt suit conference. We like to have a good time. So make sure that if you haven't gotten a ticket, that if you're at all interested in speaking, participating, whatever, you reach out now.
I agree. Show up comfortable. Make sure you're ready to make friends. Not too comfortable. Let's make sure that we're not wearing pajamas,
Well,
but
you do you. No judgment.
but I will even say, and I can say this unofficially because again, not my conference. 2020, I was probably one of the few people who stepped outside to go smoke.
Ah,
2023, 2022, the last one we just had, there was multiple lounge areas of people partaking unofficially, if you will. And
quite
I
a few.
remember saying to myself, I go, the industry is here now. It wasn't just the
Yeah.
investors. These, like, my people are here, the people from the operators and everyone else. And that felt great. It continues to feel great because it is, to me, it is one of the goals of the show has always been showcasing the best of the industry to the regular folks out there. I have a very big IT and financial network on LinkedIn, which is why I started the show and why you see it on LinkedIn most of the time. You guys are doing that in real life. I love being part of that mission and helping you. I love the reciprocation that we get from it. And yeah, man, I'm super pumped for this show.
Well, listen, I really appreciate the time. You've been great for so many years. I mean, I can't wait to see what you do next, what you do with Green Check Verified and with this show, right? You've been a bastion of this industry for a while, and we look forward to continue to partnering with you.
Thank you, man. Well, this is how I stay diligent. I hope we get to see some large personalities, someone with maybe 24-inch pythons at the
Oh, you
show
mean
in
these
Chicago.
right here?
Yeah, one of those. Not me. And those are
Yep.
not 24 inches. Someone who was recently on the Joe Rogan Experience, and I think one of the coolest things ever. I forget who was emceeing the last Miami show, but all of a sudden, this person turned in from like a normal announcer to like, please welcome Jason Wild, Rosie Matteo, and then all of a sudden, Ric Flair comes on. Please welcome the high flying, Rolex wearing,
Yes.
limousine riding. And I'm like, oh my God, it's Bruce Buffer's on stage now. This is great.
That was really special. That was really fun.
Yeah. So
you never know what's gonna happen, man.
Let's get the plugs out one more time before we end it. And then
you got it.
See you guys in Chicago.
You got it, man. So guys, if you're at all interested in coming to Benzinga's Cannabis Capital Conference in Chicago, September 27th and 28th, those are the dates. Please go to www.bzcannabis.com. B as in boy, Z as in zebra, cannabis.com. You can see the tickets there, all the information on the agenda. We'll have a deal-making room, right? So I have a survey that I'll distribute to Todd here. He can give you the link to that too. But super excited to see you all there. And thank you again, Todd, man. This is just a pleasure being on with you.
I'm pumped. If you can get me in the green room with the person who I'm assuming is going to be there, dude's a hero of mine. So
we're going to have some fun
when
man.
We get to Chicago.
All right. See you soon.
All right. Thank you. And thank you to everybody at home, guys. Definitely check out the Benzinga conference, bzcannabis.com. It's not a show to miss for all things C-Lab. Check out joinclab.com. If for some reason you missed any part of this interview or you'd like to watch it back, find us at youtube.com/elevateyourgrind or search for Elevate Your Grind wherever you listen to your podcast, pretty much Apple or Spotify. Folks, we'll be back with you next week with a new episode. Talk to you soon.